This Bullet Heaven channel video was made possible with a pre-release unit provided by United Games Entertainment and Strictly Limited Games. Some of the features shown in this video may change in the final retail version. The world of mini consoles with large libraries of games built in has grown significantly since the introduction of Nintendo's NES Classic Edition in 2018. Followed by the Super NES, then the Sega Genesis and Mega Drive, and expanding to consoles like the PlayStation, PC Engine and TurboGrafx-16, and even the Commodore 64, minis took hold, and for a while were wildly popular for better or for worse. Somewhere along the line, arcade cabinets would also see shrunken down versions of their original counterparts, some with single games represented, and others, like the Neo Geo Mini, following the same blueprint as the many home systems that saw the same treatment before it. With SNK's offerings striking first, but with questionable output features and controls, the Sega Astro City Mini brought the concept back on track with robust, real miniaturized arcade controls and standard, higher quality HDMI output. Now, the Taito Egret 2 has gotten the mini treatment, and not only does it feature a seriously good library of quality games, it also has a secret weapon. The Taito Egret 2 was a JAMA arcade cabinet designed to accommodate a wide variety of games in a small volume package, so as to be able to be placed pretty much anywhere. A so-called candy cab, the Egret 2 made its name with its ability to play both Yoko or horizontally oriented games and Tate or vertically oriented ones as well, thanks in no small part to its ingenious rotatable CRT monitor. Side note, one thing to keep in mind is that Yoko and Tate are not used to describe scroll direction, only screen orientation. The Taito Egret 2 Mini captures the aesthetic of the full-size cab. The illuminated Egret 2 marquee, the clear Taito logo below it, the great side panel design elements, they're all here. And though it has obvious cuts to accommodate its smaller form factor, such as the lack of a coin slot, its cut-down height, just one set of scaled-down controls rather than two, and a menu button added for additional functions related to the system's main menus and options, it's remarkably close to the real deal. It's quite a bit larger than the Neo Geo Mini and the Sega Astro City Mini, though small enough that it shouldn't take up a ton of room. Still, this is quite a meaty machine, one that is sure to fill out a retro game room's shelving nicely. This particular model is the Egret 2 Mini Blue Edition, the unique Western variant distributed by United Games Entertainment and Strictly Limited Games. It features what has been typically represented as the Player 2 button set, as opposed to the Japanese version's Player 1 Pink. It not only looks the part, but feels it as well. The stick and all of the buttons are properly miniaturized micro-switched inputs, which are night or day compared to whatever the Neo Geo Mini had going on. There's even a gate switch underneath that alters the stick's directions from 8-way to strictly 4-way. Awesome touch. Unlike the Sega Astro City Mini, which featured a Yoko 16:9 display pillar box on the software end of things, the Egret 2 Mini has a proper 4:3 aspect ratio display, which eliminates the former's pillar box effect, most notable in dimly lit environments. But that's just the beginning. The actual Egret 2 could house Yoko and Tate-oriented games for a reason: its rotatable CRT monitor. The Egret 2 Mini doesn't have a CRT obviously, but it does have an amazing party trick. With a push and a twist and another push again, the Egret goes from Yoko to Tate in no time at all, and the UI even auto-rotates. Cooler still, any game can be played in either orientation, though obviously the screen will be filled completely when playing a chosen game in its intended aspect. Around back, a number of additional inputs and outputs can be found. The on-off switch, USB-A ports for external controllers that can be used for Player 1 and Player 2, a full-sized HDMI port to use a regular-ass normal cable for once, a headphone jack that may or may not allow for a much more optimal audio experience, and finally USB-C in to deliver power to the unit. There are 3 additional controllers available for the Egret 2 Mini as well, each of which are on the pricey side, but that's a topic for another video. Allegedly though, the Sega Astro City Pad can still be used. Finally, on the right side of the unit, we find something rather interesting, an SD card slot. This card slot is used to expand the Egret 2's library with additional titles, which opens the door for multiple releases, something we haven't really seen since the Neo Geo X, And not at all in a mini console such as these, at least not from an official standpoint. An SD card with an additional 10 games is included with the trackball controller, but again, another video. Coming soon. In general, a number of options are available to players by pressing the E button at the main menu. Screen brightness and sound volume can be increased through 5 different intensities. The background music can also be changed to one of 3 tracks, the default of which we prefer. Smoothing can be applied to the visuals, though in this unit, filter on and filter off seem to have been reversed. Other options also open up when connected to a display via HDMI. Wallpapers, screen rotation, and widescreen modes can be tinkered with. The Egret 2 Mini has a pretty robust library included, 40 titles actually, and a large percentage of those have a little of the old pew pew pew. Selecting any of these titles allows for players to access various dip switch settings, once again through the E button, such as difficulty, lives, and extend scores. Modern touches such as the 3 save slots for each game are also included, allowing players to save their scores or tackle harder areas of the game. A pause menu can be accessed anytime during gameplay to save or load from these states, as well as return to the top menu by way of the small white button under the credit and start buttons. Speaking of these games though, let's take a brief look at, well, all of them. Players choose what they would like to play from a rather simple list of games that can be categorized by date, alphabetically, or by favorites. As far as the titles represented on the Egret 2 Mini go, there's really something here for everyone. A wide variety of genres are represented here. Puzzle games, sports games, fighting games, belt action, or brawlers. Well, brawlers as we used to call them, action platformers, and of course all kinds of shooting games make up a diverse package. Let's dig in alphabetically. Bubble Bobble. One of our favorite games, period, Bubble Bobble is a title that I've spent quite some time with even as recently as 2018 in a local arcade. 1 or 2 players can journey into the world of monsters in this whimsical 100-stage adventure. Shockingly, even 32 years after playing it for the first time, we're still finding new things in Bubble Bobble. Bubble Symphony. The NES may have had Bubble Bobble too, but in our eyes the real sequel is Bubble Symphony, upping the cute factor exponentially with super colorful graphics and greatly improved sound, not to mention branching paths and references to a great many other titles including Kiki Kai Kai here, and the world of monsters never seemed more inviting. Bubble Memories. Perhaps the best in the series to date, Bubble Memories brings Bubble Bobble to its apex. This time players make their way up through the Rainbow Tower over the course of 80 stages, encountering many familiar foes as they do so. Unsurprisingly, it plays very, very well. Kadash. The Egret 2's lone RPG, despite playing more like an action platformer, Kadash is a title that makes the Egret 2's save states particularly useful. Unfortunately, like most others on the Egret 2 Mini, Kadash is entirely Japanese on this unit, something that may or may not be changed in the final version. Chack and Pop. One of Taito's earlier releases, Chack and Pop's premise is solid: reach and release stolen hearts and race for the exit. Its execution, however, leaves a lot to be desired. Getting wasted by the player's own bombs is frustrating enough, but getting overwhelmed by enemies while trying to catch them with an explosive that often misbehaves is less great than it sounds. Kaiser Knuckle. This one-on-one fighting game was easily the biggest test and frustration we've encountered on the Egret 2 Mini. Street Fighter 2 this is not, and while the inputs are interesting at a glance, the super cheap, ultra-strong CPU opponents make things pretty dreadful. Thankfully, the unreleased but restored 1995 Dankuga update makes things much more approachable and more fun as a result. Play that one. Don Dokodon. Falling mostly in line with Bubble Bobble's gameplay structure, Don Dokodon sees players controlling a couple of dwarves armed with hammers as they make their way through Maryland. Enemies can be stunned and thrown as weapons, whilst enemies dispatched in this manner drop all kinds of items to collect for score. If you like Bubble Bobble, you'll probably also like Don Dokodon. Fairyland Story. Actually predating Bubble Bobble by a year, but featuring the same kind of gameplay, the Fairyland Story very obviously laid the groundwork for what Bubble Bobble and others like it would follow for years to come. And let's be honest, it's super duper adorable to boot. Easily a must-play early action title. Hat Trick Hero. Who wants some sports action? Because Hat Trick Hero is where you'll find it in this collection. It's soccer, but you can knee someone in the face. Neat. Just don't tie the game 0-0, you'll get game over for that. The Legend of Kage. Want your ninja fix? Well, Ninja Warriors isn't here, but The Legend of Kage is. There's a ton of vertical travel in this game, in addition to fast-paced side-scrolling action. Paired with its tight gameplay, there's a lot to like about it. Hey, remember when everyone in the West called it The Legend of Cage? No? Just me? Huh, moving on. Liquid Kids. A solid action platformer from 1990, Liquid Kids Adventure is a bright, colorful, fun time. Players assume the role of a platypus as he makes his way through Woody Lake to take on a fire demon, attacking his enemies with water bombs and rescuing other platypuses along the way. It's one of the better non-shooting offerings on the unit, and one we're sure to revisit frequently. Lupin III. Another very early Taito game, this time based on the anime of the same name. Lupin III is a rough game. We genuinely would have preferred anything else Taito has released over this one, like Space Cyclone or something, come on. The Ninja Kids. This frantic belt-action brawler has a charming design and surprisingly tight controls for the kind of game it is. I'm generally pretty trash at these sorts of games, but the Ninja Kids feels good, so it's definitely worth a closer look. It's also pretty hilarious at times. Pirate Pete. A game as old as we are, Pirate Pete has some rather interesting ideas behind its gameplay. Multiple phases, each with different gameplay, conditions, and progression make this one a rather engaging title despite its age. It does have a lot of flaws though, especially with hit collision. Puzzle Bobble 2X. You knew we weren't going to get through this without getting some version of Puzzle Bobble up in here. 1995's Puzzle Bobble 2X features single play, versus CPU play, and of course, two-player versus, making for a title with surprisingly long legs. 2X in specific includes alternate stage sets and a new attract sequence. Quicks. Quicks is one of those games you've definitely seen but maybe haven't played. An action puzzle game, players are tasked with carving out segments of the playfield without getting hit by the flashy stick thing or the sparks that ride the borders of the stage. It's much harder than it looks, and there's definitely better versions of this game, even on this unit. More on that in a bit. Rainbow Islands Extra Version. Rainbow Islands is heavily intertwined with Bubble Bobble, so it's no surprise that it would also be included in this machine. Interestingly, it's the extra version, which surprised us with Darius music and enemies. What? That's an interesting twist for sure, but it would have been real nice to get the original on here too. In Rainbow Islands, players use rainbows to climb to the stage goal while using them to vanquish their foes and collect cool treasures. A worthy addition, we think. Rastan Saga. You got your barbarians in my miniature arcade machine. This is a pretty tough game, but we can't deny it's got some serious charm. Runark. If protecting endangered wildlife with a 4-barreled rocket launcher is your idea of a good time, Runark might be for you. Released as Growl in North America, players take on a group of evil poachers in this belt-action brawler. Some of the stuff that goes down, even in just stage 1, is, and you'll excuse the pun, pretty wild. I regret nothing. Steelworker. I'd say this is probably the worst game in the whole selection, but I made more progress in it than I did in Kaiser Knuckle. Admittedly, Steelworker has some neat ideas for 1980, but Moon Cresta was also released in 1980, so in all fairness, Steelworker wouldn't have even been a game I'd have liked playing even if I had been born early enough for it to be new. Violence Fight. Violence Fight is an over-the-top 1v1 fighting game that feels admittedly pretty shallow, but it's a pretty fun time in the end, all told. This one is definitely a great game for human opponents. We know why you're all here though. The Egret 2 Mini features all kinds of great and less great shooties and shooty adjacents that could well make it of significant importance to those with a penchant for the pew pew pew. We can't possibly go into the kind of detail we're known for here, but here's the 411 on the Egret 2 Mini's shmup ability. Adventure Canoe. Drifting down the river in a canoe may not sound like a very engaging time, but add a gun and wildlife on the shores of the river, the ever-present threat of a crocodile, and some early 80s control limitations, and you get Adventure Canoe. It's a rather limited shooting game, but still an interesting one that we had no idea existed until we played it here. Darius Gaiden. We took a brief look at Darius Gaiden in our review of Darius Cosmic Arcade Collection. Its inclusion here is an obvious one, as it is the first of just 2 single-screen 4:3 aspect ratio arcade titles in the series. As far as we're concerned, Darius Gaiden is the best in the series, and while it is available in several places, be it on the Saturn, the PlayStation 1, the PlayStation 2, the PlayStation 4, or the Switch, the Egret 2 Mini is as great a place as any to play this excellent shmup. The Super Turbo function mapped to the D button is also a welcome addition. Elevator action. On a top-secret mission, players are tasked with making their way through various buildings by way of their elevators and staircases while gunning down enemies that try to stop them. An early game, elevator action plays extremely well for its age, and while it's completely outclassed by its sequel, it has just the right amount of retro charm to make it a worthy addition to this collection. Of course, players may only spend a little time with this one because elevator action returns. The highly acclaimed and sought-after Elevator Action Returns takes the formula introduced in the original and amps things way up with greatly improved visuals, multiple characters, complex stages, new weapons, and an amazing soundtrack. Playing this one for the first time makes us really want to get the Saturn version all of a sudden. This, alongside Darius Gaiden, might be worth the cost of the Egret 2 Mini alone. But there's more. Gun Frontier. Gun Frontier is a Tate vertical shmup that preceded Taito's Metal Black with a distinct Western theme complete with flying six-shooters. It also features gameplay aspects that feel very familiar. Muted bullets, weapon power-ups that require several pickups per level, and variable strength bomber attacks that build through a large amount of gold fragments are all things that would be found in the later Battle Garega from Rising. It's strikingly Yagawa, right down to the enemy explosions, but Gun Frontier is not a Yagawa game in any way. This one is also rather pricey on Saturn, and can also be found on Taito Memories on PlayStation 2, but it's also right at home here on the Egret 2 Mini. Halley's Comet. This relatively early Taito shooter was surprisingly forward-thinking, taking equal parts Tate Y-scrolling shooter and mothership defense and adding a robust power-up system. Players set out to meet, blast their way into, and destroy a menacing comet that threatens various planets. Players also have to prevent enemies from getting past, as they will chip away at the planet's health. Halley's Comet would later spin off into Halley Wars on the Famicom Disk System and Game Gear. Halley's Comet was also released in 2021 as part of the Arcade Archive series for PlayStation 4 and Nintendo Switch, but the easy Tate function of the Egret 2 Mini makes this one a worthy addition, and a fun one to boot. Kiki Kai Kai. Pocky and Rocky is a fan favorite on the Super NES, but comparatively few players know that it's actually the second game in a now long-running series. A Tate vertical running gunner, Kiki Kai Kai is a more focused game than Pocky and Rocky would be, but definitely worth a look for fans of the later games. This version saw several ports, including the Famicom Disk System and PC Engine, as well as an Arcade Archives release. But once again, it feels great on the Egret 2 Mini. Kyukyoku Tiger. Known as Twin Cobra in the West, Kyukyoku Tiger is an interesting addition to the Egret 2 Mini, though not entirely surprising. Though it was developed by Toaplan, Taito did publish both the arcade and PC Engine versions of the game after all. Kyukyoku Tiger is a straightforward shooter in most respects, but what it does well. M2 may have released a much better product with the STG Shot Trigger's Kyukyoku Tiger Heli release, especially with its excellent custom options. But it also rounds out the Egret 2 Mini's roster in great ways. As always, Kyukyoku Tiger is a brutally hard game, but those that stick with it are sure to have a great time. Lunar Rescue. We checked out Lunar Rescue in our review of the Space Invaders Invincible collection, and we enjoyed it quite a bit despite its very early release. Lunar Rescue was developed using the exact same board that was used for the color version of Space Invaders, so it's no surprise that it bears more than a passing resemblance to Taito's premier arcade game. Particularly in the realm of sound. We might have preferred the rarer Space Cyclone, but Lunar Rescue is a decent concession. Metal Black. Though it doesn't resemble Gun Frontier in pretty much every way, Metal Black very prominently displays Project Gun Frontier 2 on startup, which is interesting in and of itself. Though it plays more like a lost alternate Darius game, Metal Black actually has much more in common with the later Border Down, which itself was made by a bunch of ex-Taito staffers that would form the acclaimed G-Rev. The Blackfly can power up its main shots by collecting special energy pickups. At the same time, players will also have access to a powerful beam attack that is dependent on the player's shot power. If the beam is used, the player's shot power will decrease, requiring additional power to charge the main shots back up. This power balance makes for a super engaging time. There are even super cool beam duels versus bosses, as would be found in Border Down and even Darius bursts that were decades ahead of their time. Metal Black was also released on the Saturn and Taito Memories too, but again, this essential shooting experience is right at home here on the Egret 2 Mini. The New Zealand Story. The New Zealand Story is an action platformer with a run-and-gun twist that has players navigate their Kiwi around various stages to rescue his friends. This whimsical game has seen release in a few other places like the PC Engine and Taito memories, but its last home release was quite some time ago, making this one a great revisit. Outer Zone. Quarter view or isometric games are often tricky to pull off, especially in the realm of shooters. Outer Zone has some really neat ideas between its multi-leveled playfield, reversible fire, and maze-like setup, but it might be just a bit too visually complicated and sluggish for its own good. Still, it has really interesting ideas and solid visuals for a game from 1984, so Outer Zone makes for a decent addition to the roster. Ray Maze. If you took Pac-Man and gave him a blaster somewhere along the way, you'd end up with Ray Maze, a really good take on Namco's eat-em-up formula. Clearing each stage without getting caught can be challenging, but various power-ups make the going a little easier and fun. Ray Maze is a great amalgamation of shooter and Pac alike, and while it recently saw an Arcade Archives release, it's still more than worthy of its place on the Egret 2 Mini. Ray Force. One of the very best shooting games to see released from Taito, Ray Force goes by many names. Gunlock, Layer Section, Galactic Attack. No matter what you call it though, this juiced up take on the old Xevious formula is just what the doctor ordered, completed with layer after layer of parallax and challenging white-knuckle gameplay. Admittedly, it sounds better on the Saturn, but without a doubt, it's great to see Ray Force make a return after its sequel, Raystorm, got an HD remaster and all. Great stuff. Scramble Formation. Released in 1986, Scramble Formation is a shooting game that gives players the ability to collect support drones that can be shifted through alternate formations. They can also be shot as missiles, resulting in a powerful damaging area of effect. Its sound and visuals are not the best, but its interesting mechanics and gameplay, not to mention its release in frequency, makes Scramble Formation a really cool inclusion on this mini cabinet. Space Invaders. Unsurprisingly, Space Invaders has made its way into the Egret 2 Mini because, duh, this is basically the progenitor to all arcade shooting games that would ever be made. So while it's very basic, it's also very significant. This particular version is the updated color version, which features a 5-digit score. For more on this and many other Space Invaders games, be sure to check out our Bullet Heaven review of the Space Invaders Invincible Collection for Nintendo Switch. Tatsujin. Like Hikyoku Tiger, Toaplan's fan-favorite Tatsujin, known in the West as Truxton, was released to arcades and the PC Engine by Taito. Tatsujin is unsurprisingly an incredibly difficult game, which is to be expected of a game whose name literally translates to expert. The sights and sounds are fantastic, especially the iconic Skull Bomber, which can be used to easily get out of hairy situations. Don't worry, our no-nonsense review for all 3 versions is still incoming. But in the meantime, we'll enjoy getting eviscerated by this version on the Egret 2 Mini. Volfeed. Okay, kind of a stretch, but not only is this Quix evolution highly playable, it also features a laser weapon that can be used for a little pew pew pew. This one was also ported to the PC Engine, as a lot of other Taito shooters have, it seems, as well as the Mega Drive, but this version is more challenging by far, especially with its required 85% capture rate rather than Quix's 75%. All in all, I'm pretty impressed. The Taito Egret 2 Mini Blue Edition is exactly the kind of mini I didn't know I really needed, but having spent a decent amount of time with it, I can comfortably say that this is perhaps the highest quality, best built mini to date. Solid, sturdy, great authentic components, and loaded with all kinds of great games to play both in Yoko, Tate, standalone, or with an external monitor, the Egret 2 Mini is a winner. But there are a couple of drawbacks. There are times that we felt a touch of input delay. Nothing major like Cotton Saturn Tribute, ACA, ZexX, or Sol Cresta Switch. It's still more than workable, but it's definitely there. Outputting to an external monitor via HDMI also results in imperfect scaling, causing a fair bit of shimmer in the graphics, something particularly noticeable in Tate-scrolling shooters. It still looks way better than the Neo Geo Mini though. The rest works so well I can't really be mad about its shortcomings. But then there's the price. The Egret 2 Mini is by far the most expensive mini there has been at retail, weighing in at a hefty, wallet-denting $229.99 US. And we get it. It features high-quality components, a clever screen rotation mechanism, and its size is considerable, but it's on the order of twice the cost of any other mini and more. And it only goes up from there. The arcade cabinet bundle from Strictly Limited Games is a finance-crushing $369.99, which admittedly includes the paddle and trackball controller with 10 extra games, an in-depth guidebook, mini instruction cards, and a 4-disc CD soundtrack. And if that's somehow not quite enough, for a bank statement swallowing $499.99 US, Strictly Limited's Game Center bundle adds a set of game flyers, an arcade backdrop, the control panel arcade stick controller, and the standard control pad controller. This starts to approach the cost of a real Egret 2, but there's reasons for this, as we'll see in part 2. The short of it is, I do actually feel that the Egret 2 Mini is worth its cost. From a Shmup standpoint, 45% of the games on the unit are of a shooting them up variety or as close as we can accept. Not on the level of the upcoming Astro City Mini V, but robust nonetheless. It's also clearly expandable, as evidenced with the trackball controller set. Its build is top-notch, and the rotatable screen is an awesome secret weapon among the many tabletop mini arcade cabs we've seen so far. Even without the extravagant extras in the ultra-premium bundles, retro game enthusiasts and collectors alike will certainly want to have this scaled-down cabinet in their collections. This really could be the best Mini yet. You better believe we've got links to pre-order the Taito Egret Mini 2 and its accessories below. It's on the pricey side, yes, but I can definitely still get behind it. Yes, it's true, we're coming back with a second part to this review as we weren't able to secure the 3 additional controllers in time for this production. But if dropping $200 on accessories for the Egret 2 Mini doesn't prove its worth, I don't know what will. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share this video to appease the mighty algorithm. We'll see you all in part 2.